The tiger growled in anger and lunged at him with its sharp claws, but fortunately, he ducked just in time to dodge the attack. He then swung his stick at the tiger's body multiple times. The tiger struck at him again, and as it came close, he bent his body and ducked his head to avoid the claws. The hamster, witnessing this, was amazed and thought he was incredible, but still couldn't believe that a mere level 1 human was fighting on par with a level 25 mutant. The hamster begged him to defeat the tiger and save him, which annoyed him because the hamster had been yapping since the fight started, making him wonder if the hamster was cheering or distracting him. He refocused on the tiger, noting that despite being struck repeatedly and suffering from debuffs, the level gap was still significant. He realized that both his mana and health were dwindling, and his makeshift weapon was reaching its limit. Clenching his arm tightly, he knew he had to finish the fight with his next strike or he would be finished. He activated his smash skill, delivering a powerful strike. The tiger growled furiously at him, but he remained calm. As the tiger leaped towards him, claws poised to slash, he dodged and approached, swinging his stick at its head with all his might using the smash skill. When the branch connected with the tiger's head, it exploded from the force, and the tiger collapsed to the ground, defeated. The system then alerted him that he had leveled up, reaching level 15. He looked at a small scratch on his arm in disbelief that he had advanced to level 15 in one go. He then glanced at the defeated tiger, realizing that defeating the seemingly undefeatable was precisely what a debuff master should do. The hamster shouted at him to stop dawdling and quickly get him out of there. After being freed, the hamster sighed, saying he had come back from the brink of death and thanked him, speaking in a surprisingly refined manner. The hamster then expressed a desire to repay his kindness, but asked if he ever felt lonely adventuring alone. Before the hamster could suggest joining him, he immediately interrupted, stating that he didn't mind the loneliness, and walked away, leaving the hamster shocked. The hamster then hugged his leg, shouting through tears that he was currently powerless due to amnesia, and begged to be taken along. He merely asked the hamster why it was being so clingy, and remarked that he did not have a hobby of raising pets. Suddenly, the system notified him that he had completed a hidden quest, and his reward was a contract with the Great Forest Spirit, making him wonder if the hamster was the quest reward. He then realized that the hamster was called the Great Spirit, and thought that, although it was a hamster, he had heard that a Great Spirit's rank was similar to that of a Spirit King. Even if there was no immediate use, if it regained its strength, it would be a great help to him. He told the hamster that they should make a contract, acknowledging its tough but cute sides, which made the hamster sweetly ask if he really meant it. They then began forming a contract, and afterward the system confirmed that his contract with the Great Forest Spirit was successful. The system revealed that the Great Forest Spirit was named Prometheus Cactus Hydra Leviathan Bless Sicaria's Anabolic Gallardo. Realizing that sharing levels as contract partners meant that when he got stronger, the hamster would too, he wondered about the title Forest Renegade. The hamster then suggested they formally introduce themselves, starting to recite his lengthy name, but he cut it short, saying it was too long. A notification prompted him to give a new name to the contracted Great Forest Spirit, so he declared that from that day on, its name would be Hamji, which means hamster, leaving Hamji stunned and surprised. Moments later, Hamji was irate. He apologized to him and told him to stop, but Hamji angrily questioned how he could name a great spirit Hamji. He simply reassured Hamji, asking if it wasn't a cute name. Hamji retorted that, even if it was, naming a great spirit Hamji was absurd. But he reminded Hamji that it was too late to change now and told him to accept it. He then inquired why Hamji had been locked in a cage when he was a great spirit, to which Hamji replied that he did not know, as he had come to his senses already trapped and could not recall any of his past memories, except his name, and that he was a great spirit of a certain forest. He summarized that it was indeed a frustrating situation, and Hamji, stretching his face, told him that he, as his master, should also help him recover his memories. He advised Hamji not to rush, emphasizing that for both of them, getting stronger was the priority for now. A moment later, they arrived at a guild house. Jericho, the mercenary guild window employee, who was an NPC, greeted him and asked what brought him to their mercenary guild. He replied that he wanted to obtain a mercenary license, knowing that to grow further, he needed one. Jericho explained that to obtain the license, he would need to pass a qualification test, and asked if he thought it necessary to verify his abilities, regardless of how immortal he claimed to be. Jericho then instructed him to capture mutant rabbits that frequently appeared in the vacant territories. He placed something on the table and asked Jericho if it could suffice for verification. Jericho looked at it in shock and asked if it was the claw of a mutant tiger, known for its strength and durability, and used as material for lower-grade weapons. He proudly told Jericho that on his way to the village, he had caught a mutant tiger and asked if that wasn't more reliable than catching some rabbits. Jericho agreed that it certainly was, but expressed disbelief that he had captured the mutant by himself. Jericho then concealed the tiger claw under his jacket, telling him that the verification was sufficient and he would issue the license. He asked him to follow. Moments later, Jericho handed him his mercenary guild license, which he accepted while thanking Jericho. Jericho then asked if he had time to listen to a story. Jericho revealed that lately, abnormal amounts of mutants had been gathering, and a nearby ranch was recently attacked, leaving the village people trembling in fear. He asked Jericho if the frequency of monster appearances in the village had increased, to which Jericho confirmed and added that the mutant tiger he had caught was originally a creature that couldn't be seen in Beerman territories until recently. He noted that lately, not only mutant tigers, but also vicious monsters like mutant wolves and mutant buffaloes were threatening the Beerman territories. He replied that he understood and realized that it was indeed strange to have a level 25 mutant in that low-level area, indicating that something must be wrong. Jericho then expressed his hope for assistance, and the system presented him with a new quest named Guardian of the Beerman Territory. His mission was to do his best to help the Beerman Territory until the situation was resolved, with a reward of 100 gold. However, he told Jericho that his level was too low to be of help. Jericho confessed that it was embarrassing to say, but he was the only one in the village who had caught a mutant tiger alone, especially just after the nearby ranch had been attacked by mutants. Moreover, their territory was on the edge of the border without any magic communication circle, meaning it would take at least a week to get help from outside. This made him wonder if the place was really in dire straits. Normally, he wouldn't accept such an unreasonable quest, but this quest reeked of disaster. He then told Jericho that he understood what was at stake, to which Jericho excitedly anticipated his help, and he assured Jericho that it was nothing, and he would assist. Meanwhile, a little further from the Beerman territory at Schreier Castle, death was everywhere. A man was crawling on the floor, covered in his own blood. He begged someone to spare him, but then a huge axe was hurled at the hopeless man's head, decapitating him while someone reminded him that he had been told not to raise his head and commented that humans were indeed a foolish race. However, they needn't worry as he, who was more superior, would become their king. Meanwhile, Tisung emerged from the weapon shop, and Hamji, who had been busy eating, commented that he looked completely like a beggar earlier, but now he seemed like a decent beggar, which annoyed him. He asked Hamji what he meant by a decent beggar. Hamji jumped onto his shoulder while remarking that he couldn't keep wearing torn training clothes forever as he examined his new weapon, wondering if it would suffice. Hamji mentioned that now that the shopping was done, they should eat. He called Hamji a freeloader and asked if he had already eaten everything, given that he had just bought him a Mona stone earlier. Hamji angrily replied that low-quality meals didn't even register on his radar, which made him ask Hamji angrily if he knew how expensive those mana stones were. They were staring at each other in anger when a man approached him, asking if he was the adventurer who had caught the mutant tiger. The man greeted him and introduced himself as Jang Manbok, the one who would accompany him on the quest. Manbok then introduced the others, Thompson and Rousey. He wondered if these were the other mercenaries Jericho had mentioned, recalling Jericho's assurance that he wouldn't be too burdened as there were other mercenaries besides him. He shook Manbok's hand and introduced himself as Siegfried. Manbok told him they were counting on him and called him captain, surprising him and prompting him to ask why he was called captain. Manbok replied that the strongest person should be the captain, and since they were just beginners who couldn't even catch a mutant tiger on their own, it made sense. He couldn't believe Manbok admitted it so openly, but replied that he understood. Thompson noted that the team had been formed and asked what they should do next. He replied that since Jericho's request was for them to guard the village alongside the Beerman regular army, they should start by visiting Bucardi Ranch, because he had heard the situation there was serious. Later, at Bucardi Ranch in Bierman territory, the army was battling mutant animals. Manbach, who was blocking a mutant wolf, shouted to Thompson to act now, and Thompson rushed to stab the wolf with his spear. Manbach lay on the ground, noting that it was tough and musing that it would be easier if you were 10 years younger. Thompson asked if it was coming their way. Manbach looked to his side, asking what was coming, and suddenly, a level 25 mutated bison attacked them, throwing them into the air. He was busy fighting another mutant and didn't notice the bison heading towards him. When he heard someone stutteringly shout a warning, he saw the bison. He then activated his smash skill and ran forward to meet the bison in the center, striking it on the head with his weapon and knocking it to the ground, defeated. The system then showed that his level had increased, and he had reached level 20. He was catching his breath, exhausted, while thinking that there were so many eyes watching him that he couldn't even use his debuff skills. He mused that hunting alone would be more comfortable. Rousey asked him if he was okay while carrying Manbox on her shoulder, and he replied that he was fine. He then asked if the others were okay, mentioning that it seemed like they were hit by the bison earlier. Manbox replied that he was a tank, so he was okay, but Thompson was badly injured. They assured him there was no threat to Thompson's life, but he would be incapacitated for a while, which he acknowledged with understanding. Manbach then commented that it was impressive to see him catch a mutated bison alone and confirmed that it wasn't a false rumor he had swallowed a mutated tiger. Suddenly, a powerful monster was said to have returned, and the mutated animals immediately looked back upon hearing this. They then rushed back into the forest. Manbach noted that all of them had started retreating and asked if it meant that the quest was complete. But he questioned if it wasn't strange that those mutants seemed to have all agreed to run away in the same direction as if they were ordered to retreat. The system then popped up, showing him that he had a general quest, titled Investigation, with a mission to investigate why the mutated creatures caused the monster wave, offering a reward of 200 gold. He realized this was a follow-up to the Territory Defense quest, making him wonder if it was not just about simple eradication. He told them that they should return to the main tent first, because he would find out where the mutated animals were headed and come back. Manbach asked if he would be all right by himself, to which he replied that he would be fine and he was the only one in good condition anyway. Hamji then happily told them that he was there too, so they shouldn't worry, making Rousey blush because Hamji was so cute. A moment later, he entered the forest and saw the mutated animals' footprints on the ground, confirming they were all heading in the same direction as he had expected. He thought that if he recalled correctly, that direction was headed toward the Schreier territory, making him wonder if they had changed their target to that place. Hamji then called him over and, hanging in a tree, asked him where he had gone, accusing him of just playing around there. He pointed in front of him, telling him to look over there. He then saw the castle of the Schreier territory. Suddenly, the castle gate opened, and he was shocked to see a monster riding the mutated tiger to meet the other mutated animals. The system then identified it as Gerugo, a legendary golden goblin that is said to appear once every 100 years. It was classified as a boss with the title of Goblin Lord, possessing light and fire attributes, and a special ability of mind control that could only be used on monsters. Upon seeing this in the system, he realized that Garuga was the reason the mutants had gone wild. Hamji jumped onto his shoulder and asked what they were going to do now that they knew the cause. He replied that they should return to the barracks for now, as there was nothing he could do alone in the current situation. He then returned to the Bierman territory barracks. A bald man introduced himself as Blick, the commander-in-chief of the Bierman territory army. He shook Blick's hand while introducing himself as Siegfried. Blick mentioned that he had heard about Siegfried's accomplishments and that Jericho had strongly recommended him. However, as much as Blick would have liked to chat, it was not possible at the moment due to the urgency of the situation, and they needed to get straight to the point. He then explained that what they had observed was that the Schreier territory had fallen to, and Blick asked if he was implying that the cause of the mutant crisis was also because of goblins. He confirmed that it was because of the Goblin Lord, who had used his mind control ability to manipulate the mutants and seize control of the Schreier territory, and was now aiming for the Bierman territory. The man warned Blick that if his observations were accurate, their beermen territory was essentially doomed, as the Goblin Lord was a monster they could not handle on their own. He suggested that they needed to evacuate the Lord and the residents immediately. Manbuck raised his hand, asking why they were unaware of the neighboring Schreier territory being attacked until now. Blick replied that they hadn't had much interaction with Schreier to begin with, and in a small territory like theirs, the communication network wasn't properly established. He added that they didn't even have the luxury of conducting investigations and were too busy trying to fend off the mutant attacks. He also noted that the Goblin Lord must have targeted that vulnerability, isolating beermen to create this dire situation. Blick lamented that their proud beermen, boasting a 300-year history, was crumbling just because of the goblins and asked, shakingly, how they should report this to their lord. He reassured Blick that there was a way, albeit not guaranteed, making Blick surprised and stutteringly ask what that method was. He replied that while he couldn't be 100% certain, if only they had time, it could be worth trying. Blick then asked him what they needed time for, and he replied that it was time for him to grow. He then laid out his plan, which was simple. First, to operate the special forces with agile individuals, engaging guerrilla warfare to cut through the mutants and disperse them as much as possible. Then lure the dispersed mutants toward his location, where he would take care of the rest himself. He informed Blick that after reaching level 30, he would join them and confront the goblins. Blick reminded him that those who descended from another world like him could grow quickly thanks to the rune of transcendence, but cautioned that the Goblin Lord was level 50. And even if he reached level 30, there would still be a 20% level gap. He acknowledged that Blick was correct about the disadvantage, but argued that just as he had managed to capture a level 20 mutant tiger at level 1, he didn't see it as entirely impossible. Even if he failed, at least it would buy time for reinforcements to arrive. Blick, deep in thought, finally sighed and replied that he understood and would trust him. The system then displayed a general quest titled, Kill the Goblin Lord. Garugo with his mission being to defeat the Goblin Lord, but the reward was unspecified. While he was busy examining the system, Hamji interrupted to get his attention, mentioning that he had a question. He immediately apologized to Hamji, assuming he needed money to buy food, which made Hamji exasperatedly yell that he wasn't talking about food, and asked if he was calling him a parasite when, in fact, he was the one being parasitic. Hamji then questioned why he hadn't mentioned earlier that the bald man seemed to be hiding something. He countered by asking Hamji how he knew about that, to which Hamji proudly responded that once he achieved the rank of Great Spirit, he developed a certain level of perception. And he shouldn't be underestimated. He explained to Hamji that when he reached level 30, he could acquire new skills that would be significantly helpful in facing Garugo, though he couldn't guarantee a 100% chance of victory. Hamji asked if there was a reason he was hiding those skills, to which he replied that he wasn't ready to reveal them yet, since there were regular users around, and if they saw those cheat-like skills, it would cause an uproar. Moreover, rumors would spread quickly. Hamji remarked that humans lead such tiring lives, but he countered that it's better to live a tiring life than to live simply and be caught off guard. Manback approached him and asked if he had finished talking with the commander, to which he replied yes, but expressed concern that the plan seemed too focused on him. Manbach laughingly reassured him not to worry about it and expressed gratitude for being included in the plan. Manbach then mentioned they were planning to rest before they left and asked him if he wasn't logging out. He replied that the operation was starting in 2 hours, so he was going to rest a bit too. Manbach and Rousey then logged out. Hamji asked if he was going back to the other world, and he replied that he would be back soon, instructing him to get himself a snack with it as he threw a mana stone to Hamji. Hamji happily caught it and teased him about being a generous master, thanking him. But then Hamji looked back at him quizzically, asking if he hadn't said earlier that he didn't have any money. He teasingly replied that he had lied and that he was off, then logged out. He removed his helmet and stepped out of the machine, feeling his muscles stiffen. He walked to his bed, thinking he should eat some food, but as he lay down, he decided to skip eating since there was no time and chose to just sleep instead. He then realized how much had happened. His guilt had collapsed. He became a fugitive, met his master, obtained the hidden job of debuff master, and was now fighting to acquire a territory. This made him realize that he, who initially played the game for revenge and money, was now purely enjoying it, leading him to question if he was not mature enough yet. Caught up in his thoughts about wanting to play again soon, and desiring to become stronger and enjoy the game freely, he was unaware of men approaching his room. Unable to contain his excitement, he sat up in bed, deciding to level up a bit before the operation started. Suddenly, someone knocked on his door and asked if he was there. He cracked open the door slightly and asked who it was, as he wasn't expecting anyone. The man asked if he was Han Ti-sung and informed him that they were there to install a capsule. Confused, he replied that he hadn't ordered a capsule. The man checked but confirmed that the address was correct and asked again if his name was Han Ti-sung, to which he replied yes, but reiterated that he hadn't ordered it. The man handed him a paper while explaining that they were unsure of the details, but it seemed to be intended for him. He should examine the document because it was specifically requested when placing the order. He accepted the letter, which congratulated him on obtaining Epic Code 007, making him think that it referred to his class. He recalled hearing that hidden classes came with tremendous benefits, leading him to wonder if this was a gift from Beehive, the nickname for the game developer of B&W, Hive. He tried his best to conceal his excitement and rushed back to his room without closing the door. A minute later, he told the men that his room was a bit small, but they should come in, and that they must have had a hard time getting there. He then asked them if they had a favorite drink. The men walked into his room, unaware that a suited man was hiding behind the wall watching them. This man reported to the chairman that they had arrived at Han Ti-sung's house and had started the installation. The chairman thanked the man, who was the director. The director mentioned that Ti-sung had no relation to him and questioned why the chairman was giving him the capsule as a gift. The chairman replied that it was because they shared the same hidden class, and they should consider it camaraderie. After the installation, he held the remote of the capsule, remembering seeing it in an advertisement before. It was for the Hyper VR Capsule Ogre, which was endorsed by Ki-hyung Seok, the guild master of Genesis. He couldn't believe that the Hyper VR Capsule Ogre, which regular players could never afford no matter how hard they worked, was now installed in his house. He looked around his new capsule, wondering if Beehive was insane to give away an ogre just like that, and if this was the special treatment for hidden classes. He put the helmet on, exclaiming that it was not the time for sleep because he could sleep when he was dead, but he should try it out immediately. The new capsule felt different from the old one, the cushioning that wrapped around his body, and the enhanced comfort of VR that made his head clearer even while playing was significantly better. It felt much more real than before. Suddenly, he felt hot wind and smelled something burning, which confused him. He opened his eyes, shocked to see a village burning in front of him. Inside the Beerman territory, the mutated animals were attacking the army, overwhelming them. He stood there, stunned in shock, and exclaimed, "What is this?" Suddenly, he heard Hamji, the great spirit, desperately begging for someone to save him. Hamji cried out that he couldn't run any further, and questioned if this was where his life as the Great Spirit would end. Fortunately, he arrived just in time as the wolf was about to bite Hamji and struck the wolf on the head with his weapon. Hamji looked back in fear and was surprised to see him. He asked Hamji if he was hurt, and Hamji, jumping onto his face in anger, demanded to know why he had only just arrived. Accusing him of nearly letting him die, he pulled Hamji from his face, telling him to calm down and explain what had happened. Hamji, still angry, retorted, "Can't you see by looking?" He then explained that as soon as they had returned to their world, it seemed the goblins had been waiting to attack with the mutants, catching the territory completely off guard. He was furious that those bastards had attacked while they were logged out. He then asked Hamji if it meant he was the only adventurer there at the moment. Hamji confirmed this, adding that this was why everything was in such disarray, but stopped when he reassured him that at least now he didn't have to worry about keeping up appearances, smiling. He then told Hamji he had a mission for him, which gave Hamji a bad feeling. Meanwhile, a goblin licked its sword, now coated in blood, as the wolves growled angrily. The goblins advanced toward the army who were protecting the women and children. The man looked back at the civilians, realizing the evacuation had failed, and that it would be difficult to move them now, not just because of one or two mutants, but because there were far too many. Exhausted from fighting, he cursed under his breath. Just as a goblin lunged at him, he thought it was the end. But suddenly, someone struck the goblin's face just in time, saving him. Confused and shocked, he struggled to comprehend what he had just witnessed. He then rushed at his weapon and caught it. Then he activated his smash skill while charging toward the goblin. Struck the goblin in the face once again. The man watched, stunned, as he explained that he was fully aware of the situation and would handle things there. He instructed the man to quickly evacuate the people, but the man hesitated, reluctant to leave everything to a mercenary like him. However, his shock was evident when he saw the light emanate as he activated his desperate defense and weakening curse skills. He thanked the man for his offer to help, but expressed a preference to work alone. Understanding, the man tossed him an item, saying it was nothing special but might help a bit, to which he replied that it was more than enough help. As the army assisted the civilians to escape, the man admitted feeling ashamed to be just a bystander, but entrusted him with the place before departing. This made him think it was okay to show his skills to an NPC who wasn't a player, though he felt awkward since it was a tactic only used in the Joseon era. His attention snapped back when he sensed imminent danger and fortunately blocked the mutant's bite just in time with his weapon. Another goblin appeared, ready to slash him. But he managed to push the mutant away and blocked the goblin's attack in time. He noted the evident pain caused by the weakening curse, observing their hastened movements. The goblin continued to slash, but he effortlessly dodged and taunted the goblin for its sloppy posture. Blocking another attack, he commented that if it hurt that much, they should have fled when he set the trap. He then steadied his feet, leapt up with speed, and grabbed the goblin's head, slamming it into the ground while declaring that he would have still killed them before they could react. He realized the superiority of the expensive capsule, as he could see the enemy's movements more clearly. His skills had already been honed by his master Deus's training, but now he felt capable of dodging any attack. He struck the enemy swiftly, musing that the privileges of the wealthy weren't unfounded, and wondered if they were hoarding all the good stuff for themselves. The system displayed that he had leveled up and achieved level 22. He sighed, feeling like he had defeated many opponents to get there, yet disappointed that he was still only level 22. He noted that leveling up had become significantly harder since reaching level 20. Suddenly, Hamji appeared behind him in a full-speed run, breathlessly calling him his fucking master. Tears streaming and being chased by a swarm of mutants and goblins, Hamji asked if this was enough for him. He smiled, thinking that leveling up difficulties didn't matter when he could just eliminate a ton of enemies. Meanwhile, Garugo, who was sitting peacefully, noted that the troublesome outsider had returned and seemed to be enjoying himself immensely. Garugo, stepping on an old man coughing in pain on the ground, said through Gwain's insight that this outsider was dangerous. If the outsider grew any stronger, he would pose a real threat, unlike the worthless trash, he said, glancing at Blick. Blick, severely injured, wondered if Siegfried had returned and gripped his sword tightly, knowing he needed to buy Siegfried some time to grow stronger. Blick then challenged Garugo, declaring him his opponent and vowing to defeat him there to reclaim his lord. Blick called Garugo a cowardly bastard, but Garugo simply smiled, questioning Blick's use of coward and if a man who couldn't even protect his master had any right to call him that. Garugo then grabbed the lord by the head, mockingly asking Blick why he didn't try to take his lord himself, and commented that he wasn't sure how long Blick or his lord would last. However, Blick knew his lord didn't have much time left, and silently urged Siegfried, who was struggling, to hurry. End of part 4 to 7. Please subscribe, like, and comment your thought and suggestions. See you on the next upload.